going on? I'm here to talk about sports media and particularly how it is captured and captivated a particular franchise known as the Dallas Cowboys. Now, obviously, this is going to be show your hand moment for this video because I am a Cowboys fan. But on that topic, my expectations for this team don't usually align with what the media will tell you. And that's not just me, by the way. Because, you see, this team had been living in quote-unquote mediocrity ever since the said 90s that they dominated. I lived through the Drew Bledsoe and the Tony Romo era. I know how bad it can get. But the point being is that the organization and the media that it is influencing and not the other way around, has that expectation. I mean, as an organization, I think they should have that expectation. They have talent. They have arguably the best window of opportunity to progress as a team in terms of playoff success they've had really since that decade. And yet, that by itself can create the illusion and the opportunity for the media to present as if this team was a contender from the jump. I've been saying it for years, and unfortunately I haven't documented my opinions on this, but they're not a contender. They never showed that they were a contender. If everyone said that they were frauds because they lost to the Arizona Cardinals, why did you not keep that same energy when the season progressed and they won against certain teams like Philly and Detroit or Seattle? They got blown out by San Fran. You know what I mean? Like, the signs that they were a contender were not there for me, someone who's been through this before with the Drew Bledsoes and the Tony Romos and the throwing away games, that constantly happen. All that kind of stuff. So let's get into this playoff game, okay? Because it, in all honesty, was a huge disappointment. I cannot deny that at all because they had home field advantage, 8-0 at home. Kind of a slippery slope type of win against Detroit, obviously. But just in general, they had everything going for them. And I've always said this, that first-round buys and winning your division and getting home field advantage is a mirage to a team that has flaws. And I kind of thought that when the season ended that, damn, maybe we shouldn't have won division because we would have, instead of being at home and having all this pressure, which I knew was going to be the downfall of them, is when the pressure and the expectation are higher than their capabilities show, that it might have been best for them to play Tampa. The team that they beat last year in blowout fashion, then they retired Tom Brady, at least for now. Who knows if he's going to make a triumphant return at age 50. But it literally worked out pretty well, not winning division last year. Not saying they should throw away games to give Philly division. I mean, I get that. But what I'm saying is that your matchup is more important than the seeding or being at home. Like, sure, they were a pretty shitty road team, but most of their road competition was competent. Except for the Arizona Cardinals, which if that didn't show you the sign that they weren't what the media was making them out to be, or even what they thought they were. It's a great quote. We are who they thought they were. Then why did you guys buy it? Why did you guys believe the people whose job it is to build up high-level, major market teams up here, and when they fall, which a lot of them do, by the way, they have their own perspective on who to blame, who's the scapegoat, and all that kind of stuff. So when we talk about this game, the first thing we have to talk about is the defense. It is not an offensive issue because I'm just going to say this off the jump. If we had 32 points in that game, 7 at halftime, but 25 in the second half is kind of turning around, the issues of your offense. If we'd have scored 32 points in two of our previous playoff losses to San Francisco, we would have won. And that's against a team that is undoubtedly, and no one would question, is a better offense than Green Bay right now. Okay, let's give Jordan Love some time. Throw away the game against San Fran doesn't convince me that he's really that good. But the point being is that, we had an adjustment to make on both ends of the ball in that game. The offense did what they had to do. The defense, however, gave up 41 of the 48 points. Which brings me to my point about who the scapegoat was, because obviously, as fans, we think of the coach. We look at coach. Let's blame the coach. Jason Garrett didn't get it done. Let's blame the coach. Before him, it was a guy known as Wade Phillips. He didn't get it done. Blame the coach. So we could easily do that again. And I'll be honest, I'm tired of Mike McCarthy's idiocy, because the game against Seattle and Detroit, he showed his lack of game management awareness. Like, just run the fucking ball. I think the biggest problem, and that most people could have saw with this team, especially the offense, had they paid attention and not let the media script the actual game for them, is that we can't run the fucking ball. Why did Mike McCarthy throw on those downs against Seattle and Detroit? He had no confidence that our offensive line would get the push and Tony Pollard would get a chunk of yards. Not even to move the chains necessarily, but to make it closer or make it easier in that regard. So it really didn't make any sense, at least to me, that people see the flaws that a team has and then are shocked when those are exposed, because guess what? Green Bay, they can run the ball. Aaron Jones, for some reason, it's like, if you have the first name Aaron, you're going to play really well at AT&T Stadium, because, obviously Aaron Rodgers did it for years, obviously, but I'm talking about Aaron Jones loves to get 3 touchdowns in a game against us. I think he's done it 4 different times. Okay? And that's not the deficiency of the offense. That's the defense's lack of ability to stop the fucking run. That's a whole different ballgame. That is not something you can point at the offense for, or even Mike McCarthy, because he had no authority over the defense. That's a Dan Quinn issue. You guys can speculate that all you want. But what I'm also here to say is that the scapegoat being Dak Prescott is ridiculous. Now, when this game was going on, I had a couple things to do. Maybe because it got out of hand, I cared a little bit less. But when I started seeing the media and these players or teammates, family members coming at Dak as if he just had the worst playoff game of all time, I went and checked the stats and watched the film. Tell me why this dude had over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have 2 picks, 1 pick six. But these stats don't scream inefficiency or bad performance. You could say it's mid because anyone could throw for 400 plus yards and 3 touchdowns. Okay. But, we gave up 41 points defensively. 7 was given up by the offense on a pick 6, sure. But 41 points defensively. That is absurd, and it's really crazy, because here's the thing. The turnover issue has become inflammatory for Dak, particularly because of where he plays, not who he is or what position he is, because every quarterback, I think, is under scrutiny of the turnover game. Jalen Hurts sure as hell got his scrutiny this season for the turnover game that he's been playing, but just the fact that, we're going to sit here and say that it is the end-all be-all of a playoff success as a quarterback, when we literally just saw Josh Allen lose a playoff game where he balled his ass off, was running all over that field, got him in position to tie the game, and they lost. And the quarterback play is supposed to be the end-all be-all of a team's success, a la Patrick Mahomes, right? So, here's the thing. If you guys remember last year, there was this particular playoff game that took place between the San Diego, stuck about 5 years in the past, the LA Chargers and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Can I ask you, what happened in that game? Trevor Lawrence, a number 1 overall pick, threw 4 interceptions in a half. In a half! And you could almost guarantee in that situation, 9 out of 10 times, when a quarterback does that, his team is going to lose a playoff game. And what happened? The Jacksonville Jaguars won that game. They came back, and basically it was like the collapse of the playoffs last year was that, LA, you had a huge lead, you were getting turnovers, how the fuck you lose this game? Well, I mean, the difference being is, because you look at the offensive turnaround between Jacksonville and Dallas in the 2 years I'm talking about, it's very similar. The difference was the defense had no adjustments to show for it. I mean, if it's 27-7 at the half, and a team ends up scoring, let's say it's 14 points, because again, a pick 6, yada yada. If they lost by 16, I don't think a pick 6 is the end-all be-all of the score differential. But if the defense can't circumvent the problems that help Green Bay get the lead, then there wasn't any point the offense could have done any better. I mean, yes, like change that drive from a pick six into a field goal, I guess, because I believe that play was third down. If it's not caught, it's incomplete. So we're kind of splitting hairs on where to place the blame in a particular part of the game as opposed to the body at work being the defense couldn't stop the run. Aaron Jones was basically walking around that field. Jordan Love was looking like a prime Drew Brees. And then the next week, he just can't handle the pressure of a close game because he's actually playing from behind. It's very telling that the defense is the one that choked. It wasn't the quarterback, because if Trevor Lawrence can win a playoff game with 4 interceptions, lack of experience, I'm pretty sure Dak Prescott could have did the same thing. But that defense just could not stop an offense that we all think it wasn't even top 3 in the NFC. What, right? Am I wrong? I'm pretty sure I'm right. The point being, though, is that blaming Dak Prescott and saying that he's the problem is what the media wants. Because here's the thing. Big market teams have a luxury of like free agent appeal, trading signs being more alluring to other teams because they have more to offer. So if the media can say, hey, we're going to support this narrative that it's this guy to blame because we're not firing our head coach, then the result of his replacement is up in the air, basically. Okay, unless you can guarantee I'm not even gonna act like we can get Patrick Mahomes, but you can't guarantee you get a Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. I mean, I'm searching for guys who are better. You guys want us to get Russell Wilson? Really? And here's the thing I say is that we, like I mentioned earlier, we've been living in mediocrity for years. This is the first time they've made 3 straight postseasons since the 90s. But obviously the media and the organization themselves have set such a high expectation that consistently being a playoff team isn't good enough. I understand that. I think the talent is there to be better than that. But considering that I had grown up in the Tony Romo era, where I literally saw this guy throw away games that would have gotten us in the postseason. I can name them. I can name the teams he threw to the other team a la Jordan Love. I can name them off the top of my head. You guys want to go back to the Romo era? Let's sign Russell Wilson. Let's act like Dak Prescott didn't have an MVP candidate season just because his defense failed to show up at home. Let's act like this dude is all of a sudden trash from one game. We always say you can't define a quarterback in his great performance off of one game. You got to see if you can do it again and again. You can't say a guy's trash because he had one bad... I mean, the stats don't say they're bad, but one bad game in terms of result and contribution. You can't define a player like that, right? Well, that's what they're trying to... That's what the media... And particularly, like I think the reason why these family members of teammates have said this is because the media has played their hand in trying to downplay something about this team. Because Mike McCarthy is now off the hook, unfortunately. I think he should have been fired before the postseason for his incompetence in clock management. But nonetheless, because Mike McCarthy's still here to stay, we got to have somebody to blame. In all honesty, I don't think there's anyone to blame. There's a section of the team to blame, which is the defense. They hadn't gave up 41 points to any other team, I believe, other than San Fran, all season. If anybody underperformed from their standard, it wasn't Dak Prescott. 3 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 400 yards. That sounds like standard, high-level Pro Bowl quarterback shit. You might lose, you might throw a pick six, but everyone does it. I've seen Patrick Mahomes throw away a game the beginning of this season against the Detroit Lions. We did not know that Detroit was going to be this good, and yet he threw away a game. But you know what? It's all good. Because this is what the media does. They want the controversy and the rise and the downfall of big market teams because it's views. And the Cowboys as an organization have contributed to that, media playbook. by building that expectation within their own organization and being public about it, which is fine. I mean, I think you should have confidence in your team if you own it. You know, Mark Cuban, in terms of the Mavericks, was so confident in his team, and then when they did it, no one could say shit to him. Obviously, Jerry Jones is in a different boat. He had his success so long ago that in terms of for him, he really doesn't have anything to prove. I mean, to be honest, I agree with that. It's just to badger the younger and, I guess, faithful, because they're just blind faithfully born into a fandom, that, you know, all the Cowboys haven't won 26, 7, 8, 9, however long you guys want to play that game. And yet, when it comes to the quote-unquote mediocrity that we're in right now, as opposed to where we were, that I'm very aware of, you'd almost would look at other franchises and say they're doing the exact same thing. I mean, in my opinion, the Buffalo Bills are the Cowboys of the AFC Championship. You know, if I was on ESPN, I could play that same narrative for the Buffalo Bills, who've never won a Super Bowl at all. Never even won one. And every year they get to the postseason, Josh Allen's playing his ass off. Stephon Diggs has always been consistently a top 5 receiver, yet they fail to get to the big game as well. Where's the overblow about the Bills? And I'd argue in terms of the NFC or the NFC East, there's a bigger disappointment this season in the Philadelphia Eagles. They made it to the Super Bowl. All of us, including Cowboys Nation, was like, damn, this team might be back. They might capitalize on how talented and how, you know, cohesive they look. And then they fall apart. They fuck up and lose division. They lose to Tampa, who we probably wouldn't have lost to, because, I mean, is Tampa's run game comparable to Green Bay? I'd say not. And I don't think seeding in any sport at this point really matters. But just generally what I'm getting at is that the media is playing a hand in this, and they do it not just to the Cowboys, by the way. They do this to big market organizations all the time. In NBA, I never see them talk about the MLB. When was the last time you ever heard like ESPN, Fox, or Barstool or something talk about how the Yankees can't win shit with a generational talent like Aaron Judge? They're not talking about it because the Yankees aren't good enough to garner the conversation. And that's the point, is that the Cowboys, are they contenders, and are they playing a hand in the media misleading everyone into who they really are? Sure, but they're winning. That's why it's even happening in the first place. I can point to every Cowboys fan and remind you of a time when Tony Romo, who I have my criticism of, and because of his career, I have more appreciation for Dak Prescott. People don't realize how bad we could have it. But I also remember when he got injured. I believe it was a back injury, neck, something of that sort. And John Kitna, who was a part of that 2016 Detroit Lions team, by the way, was our quarterback. And God, was it bad. Oh my God. It was bad. And it wasn't just because of John Kitna either. We didn't have a go-to receiver. We didn't have Dez yet. Or maybe he was a rookie or something. So he hadn't developed yet, right? Defense was arguably even worse. Like, they couldn't defend the pass or the run back then. They couldn't do either. You know, if you were a running team, you ran on them, you had success. If you were Peyton Manning or Drew Brees and you threw the ball a lot, you were going to have success. It could be a lot worse. And that's what the media wants. They want us to go back to the injured Romo days of throwing whoever at quarterback and saying, hey, deal with the pressure of being the Cowboys quarterback and win those games. If the Super Bowl is the end-all, be-all of your fandom for a team, damn, you're going to be living in misery. That's one thing I've learned. I learned that about being an NBA fan. I'm mainly just a Damian Lillard fan, so when he left Portland, I left, and I'm a Bucks fan now. I was living in that mediocrity for years. And we had windows from, like, I'd say 2016 to 2019 of, like, believable contendership. You know, a record to show for a lot of wins that maybe we could run the West. A superstar player who's damn near leading the league in scoring in Damian Lillard. I've been through this with a different sport, but the only difference is the Portland Trailblazers aren't this big market with this illustrious past. that people could point and say, well, they haven't won a championship since 1977 when Bill Walton was actually a good player. You could do this for any team. I mean, the 49ers are in the conference championship again, so, like, as of now, we can't. But imagine if they fuck around and lose to the Lions or get to the Super Bowl, lose to the Chiefs or the Ravens. We could point back to the fact they hadn't won a championship since, like, 1992 or wherever it's been. Like, their last two appearances with Colin Kaepernick and, who the fuck was it? It wasn't Brock Purdy. Who was it? Jimmy Garoppolo. It was Jimmy G. Their last two appearances ended with losses. But we're going to say that it's good enough that they made it there? I mean, we can't say it's good enough that LeBron made it to 10 finals without bringing up his finals record and holding that against him, that he's lost more than he's won. But we can do that for other NFL teams that aren't the Cowboys? That's a very particular approach on how to view sports. You know, if the end-all be-all is winning it all, for every team, not just one, then we can take that angle with any team that we desire. If I wanted to prop my channel to be an anti-49ers channel and they fuck around and lose, I mean, I might be biting these words in like 2 weeks, but regardless, if they fuck around and lose again, I could do the same thing, and I could be here saying what can go wrong with the 49ers will go wrong with the 49ers, because it's about winning it all, right? And that's the point, is that there's no reason to have this sort of blow up. I will say that a first-round exit of a dominated fashion is not good. I'm not saying that the loss in the season result was not bad. It surely hell was, from what we saw in terms of, like, even particularly on home field advantage. But to say that this is the biggest disaster of a team, really? Really? I'll keep perspective on it. Like, I'll just keep perspective on the fact that this is what the media does, and if our team falls for it, which I have to give Jerry Jones a lot of credit. He does not fall for this shit at all. I mean, last year the same thing happened, and he backed Dak Prescott. I mean, he might not do the same thing this year, but you can tell by what he's done with the coaching position and keeping Mike McCarthy. He's very aware that the media wants to be the destruction of the Cowboys. They're not offering peaceful advice, and you know, it's kind of the media's game as a whole to talk about the negative. It's not views, it's not profitable if you're talking about how good a team is and how this other team that lost, it's like, we shouldn't focus on them, they lost. That's what most of us would do. We move on to who's left. But the take is in the negative. And so that's what I mean when I say, like, I could deploy that same tactic for any team of any sport that fails to meet their set expectations. I mean, for example, I just admitted I'm a Bucks fan, even though I'm converted, so, like, last year doesn't count for me, sure. But last year they were the first seed and looked to be on their way to maybe a conference finals. I thought so, at least. I thought they were going to be the ones to play Boston. They got gentlemen swept by the 8th seed Heat. And I'm going to do a video talking about the bubble, by the way, because I think that's also something that a big market team has been heavily scrutinized because of the smallest of details and stuff like that. But just that alone, the Milwaukee Bucks last year were a quote-unquote disappointment. Giannis had his interview where he was like, do you consider disappointment? No. But the point being is that from a grand scheme of things, it is a disappointment. You're first seed, you're a contender, and you lose to the AC in the first round. Dallas Mavericks did the same thing in 2007. It happens. But in order to act as if it is the biggest collapse of something, is to say this team had no challengers in front of them. Which, when we get to the bubble video, I'll explain more in detail. So thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe. And don't fall for the media's takes, because they're just, ugh.